There was a time when the film camera industry was booming and manufacturers were knocking up model after model to whet the appetites of photographers of all calibers. There's literally been hundreds of film cameras produced over the last 70 years or so by manufacturers. Some of them are broken and no good anymore, some of them have been thrown in the bin. Some of them are used by me and you, and I should imagine there's quite a few still in attics somewhere waiting to be discovered. So if you're new to photography, or you're like me, and most of you are complete film nuts and just love the heritage of old cameras, I've listed my top 10, not favourite, but top 10 cameras to look out for on the used market. Some of these I have, some of them I haven't got and would like to have over time at some point if the price is right. But I'm going to go through my top 10 cameras, and if any of you guys can add to this list, stick it in the comments what model and roughly what the price range is at the moment in 2023.
4000分の1秒でいただきます。瞬間遊戯4000分の1秒 Nikon FE.
So first up is a camera that I've always wanted and never actually had, is the Pentax K1000. So the K1000 is a 35mm camera. It was introduced in 1976 and it was in production all the way till 1997. It's quite a long time for a camera to be in production. The camera is fully manual with shutter speeds from bulb mode all the way to 1000, and it runs off a little tiny LR44 battery. You can pretty much get them anywhere. And also being fully mechanical, it works without batteries. So if you get a dead battery, you can still use the camera, albeit if the light meter does work, it won't work without the batteries. And the camera also uses the Pentax K bayonet fitment, where there's plenty of lenses online with that fitment as well. And there's still many out there today, but you can expect to pay $250 for a decent one and up to $450 for a mint condition one. These are what I found online. And I'm talking dollars, guys, because it was easier for me to search in dollars all these prices than it was pounds. Next up is the Olympus OM1. I've put this one in there. This is a camera that I haven't got, and another camera that really I should look for if I can get a bargain price. The OM system was introduced in 1972 by, I'm sorry if I butchered this name, Yoshihisa Matani, and the first in line was called the Olympus M1. But with Leica already having the M system, a legal battle broke out, and so Olympus had to change the name to the OM system. And the OM part means Olympus Matani, after the guy that came out with that camera. And then it went on, the OM1, the OM2, the OM3, the OM4, etc, etc. But the OM1 is probably the most favoured of the OM series. It's a fully manual SLR camera, and a bit like the K1000, shutter speeds ranging from bulb mode all the way to 1000. It is a fully manual camera. So these can go from around £50 for a battered one all the way up to £350 for a mint condition. And while we're on the Olympus series, number 3, I've put the Olympus OM10. Now this is a camera that I had the privilege of using a few years ago on the channel. I'll put a link in the description if you want to see my video all about the Olympus OM10, and I absolutely loved it. I loved it so much that I went out and bought the OM20 after using that camera. Why didn't I buy the OM10? I'll tell you that in a moment. So the OM10 was produced between 1979 and 1987, and I think it was a huge hit. The new price at the time was around about $260, and you can pick them up now for between $60 and $350. And the OM10 is an aperture priority camera, so all you need to do is select the aperture, select the film speed, and the camera will adjust the shutter speed accordingly for your right exposure. But back in the day, Olympus had a little tiny attachment which you attached to the camera. It was about 30 quid, and then you could turn the OM10 into a fully manual camera. But the downside with the OM10, a bit like the OM20 that I've got here, is it doesn't work without the batteries, so you need batteries in it. So if you was out shooting the OM10 or the OM20, I don't know any other OMs that do this, but if you was out shooting and your batteries failed, you ain't going to be able to function the camera, simple as that. And another nice thing about these little tiny Olympus cameras is they're nice and small and compact when you compare it to other cameras of the day. This is a Chinon 35 CS 35mm CS camera. Look at the size of it compared to the Olympus. So these were really compact and nice and light to carry around, and there's plenty of lenses as well. The OM system lenses, they're plentiful online. So I've put OM10 as my third camera, even though I haven't got one. Maybe one day I might get one.
Give us a wave, Banjo Long.
Hi, Bailey.
Hello, son.
Bailey? What, David Bailey? Stone me? I've got all your records.
Next up is the Pentax Spotmatic F, and this camera was produced between 1973 and 1975. I researched that the new price was around $279, and today you can pick them up for about $40 to $250. Again, bad condition and a really good condition one. I was lucky, I picked one up, I haven't got it here, I've lent it to a friend, but I picked one up for £10 about 5 or 6 years ago from a local seller, and it worked fine. And it's called Spotmatic because in 1964 Pentax introduced the through the lens metering system, and they made it a spot metering, so that's why it was called Spotmatic. But a little short time after that, they realised that the spot metering wasn't really great to put inside these cameras, so they ended up changing it to centre weighted metering, but they still kept the name Spotmatic, so that's why it's called Spotmatic. It's because of the original metering system. So like the K1000, it's a fully manual camera with a light meter shoved inside, works off of a battery, and being fully manual, even if the battery's dead, you can still shoot it. So fourth on my list is the Yashica Electro 35, which is a 35mm rangefinder camera, and that was produced between 1966 and 1977, and at the time they were being sold for around about $100 brand new. Today you can pick them up for between $25 and $300 depending on the condition. And they say that these cameras are basically a poor man's Leica, but my experience with this camera is the lens is very, very sharp. It's got a decent internal meter inside, a little bit strange because on top it just says over or underexposed, and it's an aperture priority camera as well, so you select your aperture and the camera does the shutter speed for you. If there's no batteries inside, it does shoot, I believe, around about 400th of a second, so you're stuck with that. And when the batteries are inside, its maximum speed is 500th of a second. I think there is a way to do longer exposures, but I can't remember. But if you do find any of these Yashica Electro 35 cameras, have a little research online of something that's called the pad of death, which they're prone to. I believe they're easily fixed, but if you can get a decent camera that's working, the Electro 35, it's a fantastic camera with a great sharp lens. Next up is this camera here, the Fed 2 that I recently acquired, and this was produced between 1955 and 1970. Relatively inexpensive camera at the time. This was around about $80, and today you can pick these up for between $40 and $250. This is quite a decent one. It's a little bit similar to the Leica F that I've got. In fact, I've got the Leica F's lens on this camera because it didn't come with a lens. And there was many of these Fed cameras made. This particular one is the Fed 2 35mm rangefinder camera. It's quite heavy. And the name Fed come from the person that designed and made this camera. His name was Felix Edmond, that name there, yeah, that's why it's called the Fed, and obviously 2 probably for the second version that he made, I don't know. But the lens mount is the same as the Leica F, which is an M39 screw fit mount, and I haven't had this camera long, but I've put it on my list because this is actually, I think people need to know about these. You can get them for a good price online, but actually fantastic to use. There's no frills, no light meter, everything's manual with this camera. It's not as difficult to load as a Leica F, I would say, but I've shot this a few times now and I've had some great results. There's no light leaks, nothing. So it's a nice little camera, and the shutter speeds on it, they go from 1/25th of a second to 500. There's only 25th, 50th, 100, 250, 500 and bulb mode as well. So I've put this down on my list as one to look out for because I've had experience with it and I like it.
The Canon AE1 Plus program. It adjusts itself in a microsecond to capture the action.
And the next up is a camera that I once nearly bought at auction. I was too tight, it went for 50 quid. My maximum bid was 30 and I lost out. Oh my God, I wish I'd went to 50 quid. That's the Canon AE1 or the AE1 program. And at the time they would have cost around about $375, but today you can pick these up anywhere between $40 and $350. Introduced in 1976, the AE1 continued production until 1984, which during that time in 1981 they released the AE1 program, which was a fully automatic camera, automatic aperture and shutter speed. All you had to do is put a film in it and press the button. And the shutter speeds range from bulb to 2 seconds all the way to 1,000th of a second. Now the other cameras I've mentioned are aperture priority. The AE1 is a shutter priority camera where you choose the shutter speed and the camera lens will choose the aperture for you. So you stick the lens in auto mode, choose your shutter speed, take your pictures, and the camera will decide what aperture is best for the correct exposure. And being an electronic shutter, you're stuffed if your batteries run out, so you won't be able to shoot that camera without batteries. And these cameras use the Canon FD mount, for which there's an absolute ton of lenses online. If you buy one of these cameras a body only, there's loads of these lenses out there for you to grab. Some inexpensive, some are expensive, but there's plenty out there, that's the main thing. Bloody hell! It's a Nikon FE! Next up is a Nikon FE, and this camera was produced between 1978 and 1983 for around about $350 at the time. Today's list pricing is between $150 and $450, and a little while ago I had the pleasure of using one of these cameras. I have a video on the Nikon FE. If you want to see my video on that, I'll put a link in the description. Unlike the Canon AE1, the Nikon FE is aperture priority, so again, if you select your right aperture, the camera will select the shutter speed for you. And you can use it in fully manual mode as well, with speeds ranging from 8 seconds all the way to 1,000th of a second. Now with this camera, if the battery fails on you, you can still shoot it. There's a little tiny switch and you choose M90, and that enables you to be able to shoot the camera, but limited to only 1/90th of a second. But at least there's something there if you get stuck without batteries. And Nikon had many cameras in the F range back in the days, from lower end all the way to a high end, and there's far too many to mention, but the FE is definitely one on my list for the future to try and snap up if I can get one at the right price. Which brings me on to the Nikon F100. Now this is a camera that I've never touched, I've never seen before, but I know from my comments that people love this camera, so I've stuck this one on my list as well. We're starting to jump a little bit into the technology now with Nikon. They've bumped the price up. The starting price on this was $1,400, which is quite a lot of money back in the day, so I can only assume that this was used by professionals, wedding photographers or event photographers at the time. And you can pick one up today. A shabby one looks to be around about $120, anything up to about $500. It has all the bells and whistles that you would expect from a 90s film SLR, fully auto, aperture, shutter priority, a manual, autofocus, matrix, metering, center weighted metering. The lists just go on with these cameras. And it also does 4.5 frames per second, so you can burst off some nice quick shots on birds or whatever you want to take photographs of. And when you look at the used prices, you're getting a lot of camera for the money as long as it's all working. So far this is my choice of cameras that I've put down. I've kept in mind the price. I'm trying to keep the prices low for any beginners out there that want to come into film photography and think I really need a decent camera but can't make my mind up. These are my choices that I would throw out, and like I said, I'm putting out there the availability and also the cost of the cameras as well.
本物をつかめ Nikon F2
But there's many other cameras that you might want to research, such as CANON, Praktica, Minolta. I haven't put any of those in the list, otherwise we would have just kept going on and on and on for ages. But there's one last camera that I want to finish off with, and that is the Nikon F5. And this fig is an absolute beast. This isn't mine, this is a family member's that he's lent me. And I do shoot from time to time, love shooting this camera. Mate, at the time, this was nuts. This thing was over $3,000 new, and it was aimed at the professional photographer, so probably paparazzi, event photographers. 10 bursts a second it does. It's absolutely nuts. I've got a video on this camera if you want to see that. I'll put that link in the description, where I went out and shot a whole row on seagulls, 10 frames per second. Blimey, well that went quick. The film just went, you know. It's just got so many functions, I can't even go through it. But I'll put a link in the description to the video that I made on this when I got my hands on it. It's a lovely camera to use. It's just got everything. It's just got everything inside, you know. And this Nikon F5, this was produced between 1996 and 2004. And today you can pick these up for around 200 or 300 quid for a half decent one. They just get silly money up to $1,800, not quid, sorry, dollars. $1,800 for a mint condition one. Most of these mint condition ones I found are coming out of Japan. So, you know, if you're in the market for a mint condition, any of these cameras, have a look at the Japanese market. They seem to have some clean stuff out there. So that's my top 10 list of film cameras. I get asked quite a bit from people sending me messages and emails, new starters in film photography, asking what's the best camera for them. It's hard for me to choose. If I said go and get the Nikon F5, they'd probably weigh them down all day long. Probably be better off with something like a little OM10 or OM20, but the batteries run out, you can't use it fully manual. So, you know, it all depends on what you're after and what your capabilities are. But those are my top 10 cameras. A couple of them I haven't got. I'm looking for maybe an F100 in the future, a Nikon FM. I might try and have a little hunt for one of those in the future, but it all depends on the price. I'm not the one for going out and trying to buy the high-end ones. If I don't have to, if I can find a decent one, it might be a little bit shabby, a little bit dented on the side, but if all the mechanics work inside the camera and it takes a great picture, it's pretty much where I want to be. So anyway guys, hope you enjoyed that video. Let me know in the comments if you can add any cameras to this. Probably some people are going to come out with the F2 or the F3. Let us know, and also what the prices are going for today between the bottom and the highest price. Cheers guys.